Surf Monkey Coconut. What a fine day in Seattle it is here today. It's actually about beginning of fall. It's late September, almost October, and the weather's going to stay like this all the way till next summer. Great. Well, it doesn't make great tobacco growing weather, but good thing we've already sown our tobacco and got them growing. So without further delay, let's show you the tobacco and how they've done this summer. Bam! Isn't that a glorious sight here? Havana tobacco, full grown. I'm just kidding, guys. This is not the full grown tobacco. This is Havana, but it's not full grown. I'll let you in on this one in a little bit. Here is our full grown and in full glory display Havana tobaccos on our balcony up here. I like to call this our Sky Lab. We actually were growing some other experiments here. This is a aquarium of moss and stuff, but for today's purposes we're looking at our Havana tobacco. And aren't they big? It's hard to tell in this video, but this is actually above my head. I stand about 6 feet tall, so this is roughly a 7-foot plant, but minus this pot, which on its own stands about 18 feet. So roughly this is a 6-foot plant if you count the seed pods. So sorry about the background noise if you hear any, and there seems to be some kind of storm coming through, so it's a little windier than it is usually up here. But we can see our full-grown tobacco plants, and I wanted to show you what we do with the bottom leaves. And when that your plants are ready for harvest, leaf harvest anyway, when the bottom leaves are turning yellow. And here you can see a lot of yellow bottom leaves. This one I've already took the liberty of taking off some of the bottom leaves because they're just getting a little crummy. There's holes forming in it from rubbing against the pot there. You can see a little bit of damage from just the bottom skewers. And this is an interesting hole. This one actually came from when the plant was younger and the skewers went through the leaf and just kind of grown out from there. This isn't actually done by a insect or anything, and there's very few insects that actually will attack a tobacco plant because of its sticky leaves and sticky texture. But when the plant is ready for leaf harvesting, you can tell by the yellower color than the upper leaves, and these leaves will readily snap off. They'll sound like a piece of celery, but it'll be far more easier to break off than cracking a piece of celery. So I'm going to put all my fingers down and I'm just going to press down really quickly. And there you go. You might want to hold it with your thumb, but there went that leaf. I'm just going to take off a whole bunch of these bottom leaves here. It also makes it easier to water the plant overall when you expose the entire pot there. And this one has a little bit of damage anyway, so I'm just going to pull that one off as well. And here, that one wasn't quite ready to be pulled off, but okay, I pulled it off anyway. So for scale, here's the leaf and here's my hand on it. So it's a pretty big leaf. I think my hand is roughly, I have no idea how long my hand is, but it's 1, 2, 3 hands long. So it's a pretty big, substantial leaf. Here's our first fall harvest. Fantastic. We actually grow our seed tobaccos we contract with independent farmers up in eastern Washington, so this isn't the ideal conditions for these. It's good to note that on our display balcony here, we only have Havana tobaccos growing. And that's because these tobacco plants are kind of regionally distinct, but they're actually the same species of plant. And if you have different, regional distinctions of plants, like say a Havana and a Virginia growing next to it, they will actually crossbreed really easily. All it takes is one bee to go from that plant to this plant. Both of these are Havana, so we're not in danger of that. But what will happen is these plants will be fine, but the next generation, if you're going to reuse the seeds, will be some kind of hybrid, if not some kind of mystery tobacco, if you have multiple types of tobacco growing on the same site. We actually contract with some independent eastern Washington growers. We have several different sites we only have 3 varieties because of this. Each of the sites are separated by at least a mile between each farmland, and we're only taking up a small portion of each farm, so it's not a big production at all, but it's our way of maintaining our genetic integrity here. I saved this plant. I've only let 2 of these, the big Havanas go to full growth. We're not actually trying to start a farm here, but this is just for our display purposes, and I like to, just kind of show my friends how big these plants can get. But I wanted to show you what happens with our with a Havana plant that hasn't been transplanted. As you can see here, its growth has been incredibly stunted. It's probably, good, volume-wise, it's like a good 3% as big as this plant. It's not even as tall as one leaf of that full-grown Havana. They want to illustrate the point of what happens when you don't transplant a tobacco plant and give it all the needs that it has to get, for its growth. Both of these seeds were sown at the exact same time, except this one I just didn't transplant. I kept watering it just like the full-grown plant, but this one was limited in the amount of room that it got to spread its roots out, and you can clearly see how yellow the leaves are, but even more obvious than that, you can see how tiny that plant is compared to the bigger plant. So every so often I get a email message about, my plant hasn't grown very much over the past couple months, but what you do want to make sure you do is allow the plant to get a bigger pot. It's just as important as watering and fertilizing. The plant will absolutely not grow if its roots are bound, and to an extent I even think sometimes these 5-gallon pots are a little too small, where this plant could have grown even further with a bigger root ball. And that's kind of seen in our Eastern Washington site. Some of the plants are absolutely gigantic. So last thing, I just wanted to see exactly what this root ball looks like. Here's our 3.5-inch pots that we sell on our eBay site. This should, see if I can do a one-handed, and it does slide off pretty easily. There we go. And you know what, this actually isn't very root bound at all. I thought it'd be far worse looking than this. You could actually still break this up and plant this had we had a longer growing season here. That's really interesting to me. So it's actually not that it's root bound so much. It is stunted in that it can't spread out its roots, but it's actually just the plant just stopped growing. Really interesting compared to the larger Havana plants again. So I just want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.